Hey, everybody. Welcome to MLS Listings Live. Mark Messimer here, your director of outreach, industry outreach. And welcome in the crew to talk about this topic. As you saw, the shifting sands of real estate technology. And Miranda, if you could go ahead and start bringing in Dave Wetzel, our president and CEO of MLS Listings, because he's going to be our guest today on this one. Let me kick some things off here, get some things going. And while you're bringing Dave up, and I'll wait for Dave's sound to kick in. There he is. He's working his sound up. There he is. We got him. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Here I am.
Hey, you and I started talking about this. I'm going to go maybe 45 days ago, maybe a month or so ago, but it really got kicked off, the shifting sands concept with the purchase of Glide and Showing Time. And that's
those are the two main ones, but there were several there, but yeah, those were some of the ones that started a lot of discussions. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screen show started here for us because you sent us out into the world and said, Mark, go find out about what's going on with that. And the first thing I found out is it's got a name.
It does.
Real estate technology has its own name.
It's got a little name, prop tech. You hear that kind of bantered around. And well, it's kind of simple. I mean, it's really just whatever technology all of our subscribers are using, whether it came from us. There's a lot of things that they go and they buy direct from different vendors, and that's all prop technology. And and there's just been a lot of change in that whole arena.
Right. I feel like the word or the name prop tech maybe came from Wall Street. They needed to give us a name to categorize us.
Put in the category. Yeah.
Okay.
And what's interesting about today, Mark, is that this usually when I come on these, we're talking about a set feature or new enhancements. We've got something very tangible, something you can point at, something you can touch and feel and use in the service. Today, we're just kind of talking about prop tech in general and pulling the curtain back and showing people what happens behind the curtain and within the MLS in this ever-changing world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a frenzy, it feels like. And we're going to take a look at a graphic on the frenzy here real quick. Hey, Dave, before we go any farther, this is it's a live show, but we design them to be interactive. So for the audience out there, if you've got questions as we're going along, down there at the bottom of your screen is I think we're doing the Q&A section is where we want your question. Dave, at the end of the show, we'll bring those questions up and we'll address them as we go along.
Great.
Okay, so want to kick back over to what's going on, and Dave, in a I'll say a normal world or the regular world, what you're looking at here, these were the big transactions we found 2019, 2020.
Yeah, and I'm sure there was probably others in there too, but this is kind of a representative list of what we were looking at in a normal year, if you will. And then all hell broke loose, if you will.
Yeah.
And and this year's not even done yet.
Yeah, and you sent me the last three there, I think like last week, last week. Mark, add these.
As we were building this content for this presentation today, Mark, here's another one. Add this.
Add this one to the list. Yeah. So we've got some big names in there. We've got some real estate giants. We've got some of our old standards, Black Knight, right? And Black Knight's there in that acquired. They're doing some acquiring right now. Some of the bigger ones, though, on the far left-hand side, CoreLogic. CoreLogic's a beast of a company.
Yeah. So what this is talking about is just a list of what we've been looking at. And that first column is acquired.
Right.
That means that company was bought. And then the second column is who bought them.
Yeah.
and then just a little bit more of the details in the next couple of columns. But you're right, there are some big names. So CoreLogic was bought. CoreLogic is for those who don't know, that provides us with Matrix and Realist. Those are some two very key components of the service here.
Yeah.
They have a number of other things that they sell directly to agents, and they have some things that they sell in other areas outside the MLS.
Yeah, other industries
arena.
even. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're a huge company, bought by Stone Point Capital. So
an even bigger company. And there's sort of an interesting company, Stone Point Capital. That's sort of, Wall Street coming in, right? So now we've got people in the industry buying. We've got people outside of the industry buying into the industry, kind of stuff. So capital organizations, VC money, we've talked about that before, is now pretty well involved.
Yep. So you see that in that second column there as to who these different companies are that are buying these.
Okay.
They could be private equity firms, and private equity firms have different reasons for wanting to buy companies, and you have other companies in the space like Black Knight. Black Knight is the company that gives us Paragon.
Right.
By the way, so the people who didn't know Black Knight, that's who Black Knight is. And then you see some brokerages on that column as well.
Yeah. And a real mix of different products and services. The one I found sort of interesting, I'll put it this way, is the organization that I started with. You said, go out, Mark, do some research. So I went out and started research. And absolutely, I went to Inman, right? Because Inman's all about what's going on inside of our industry. And we all read it for, a lot of different things. And then Inman got bought.
And then Inman made the list too, which is kind of interesting, right? So there's no bounds on these.
Right. Now we mentioned them, but I want to bring them back up again because we sort of took the 1-2 punch with Showing Time and Glide when those transactions came down. Yeah,
we were in the midst of reviewing and scheduling tools, and we were just about ready to sign with Showing Time, and then Zillow purchased them. So we stopped and said, wait a minute, is that the best thing that we should be doing?
Right.
Zillow, who Zillow is that what we wanted to do there? And we ultimately picked a different path. Glide was a little different in that, we had Glide. You could use Glide to do PEAT forms here. Right. Glide offered services to all CAR members.
Correct.
And then they were acquired by Compass, and then PEAT forms, the need for that went away, so we pulled them off that anyways. But yeah, it's just those two had my phones light up.
Exactly. And that's where I wanted to go next was, how'd those phone calls go, Dave?
Well, there was a lot of concerns around those, and the concerns all centered around the data. So you put data into these tools when you're using the different tools for whatever the tool is, and it's got a purpose, right? And a lot of times there's data in that tool that you enter. So like in a showing example, you'd put in information potentially around your buyer, because if you wanted the buyer to see what was happening on these showings, you might have the buyer contact information there, or you might have the seller contact information there if they needed to approve a showing schedule. So then you'd have all this information in that tool, which then becomes owned by somebody else who has access to the data, who doesn't have access to the data. And that's what was causing my phones to light up when those happened, because we had different brokers who would call with concerns and say, is it okay for my office to still use that tool? Who will have access to our data in the new world of that ownership of that tool? Is it okay? Is it not okay? And that's where all those conversations were taking place.
And that meant you had to reach out to, those purchasers and ask the question of, okay, my subscribers are concerned. What are you going to do with that data?
Yeah, and in some of those cases, we were already under contract, and using their product in our service.
Right.
So we would have to go back. First, we went back and looked through the contract and said, what does the contract say about the data? Does the MLS own the data?
Right.
Does the listing agent or the buyer side agent own the data? Does the vendor own the data? In some cases, it was, clearly written one way or another in the contract. In some cases, it was just kind of left to be interpreted.
Okay.
And so we'd have to have those conversations with them as to who owns the data, who has access to the data. And so then the other thing, we took it a step further with many of these when we had those conversations and said, okay, so you're saying that the data is safe, no one's going to access it. Can I talk to your IT staff? I'd like to understand more about how that's set up.
Right.
And so sometimes that would be perfectly legit, and they'd set us up with the IT people and talk to us about how that was set up and how that was accomplished.
Got it.
And other times, that was not a conversation that we were allowed to have, and that could be a telling thing right there.
Right. But I think it's a good time to point out, we ask questions like that of our technology providers and partnerships because we have expertise. I mean, you spent many, many years with Cisco and IBM and Siemens. You were the purchaser, right? You were putting.
I was on the other side of that table, yeah.
Right, but the questions to ask that maybe other MLSs in the nation don't have that expertise in-house. MLS Listings does.
We do, and that expertise is not just me because I was on the other side of that table. It's also right. We've got a really strong technology staff who could look at these things and say, hey, let's ask them about this. Let's see what they mean by that. And then we have a lot of people that can help us through the contract side. And right. When we see that paragraph or the missing paragraph in the contract, we can say, wait a minute, let's have that conversation. So we have a village of people that all contribute different parts to that conversation.
Okay.
And then we have that conversation with the vendor.
Good.
And it just seems natural for us to be able to have those conversations. And right. So we do.
Now, one of the other things a big topic of discussions even before COVID has been feedback. You got feedback when Showing Time and Glide, got bumpy on us. But we also went out and looked for more feedback. We knew this was a topic of concern. We put surveys out. My team was out at different events. We've always got feedback at MLSListings.com, which people, is still active. And you read those feedbacks as they come in, right?
I read them once a week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to say I read them as they come in, but no, I read them at the end of the week. And and I have a team that will give those to me, collect them up, and I can take a look at those. And I do look at those.
Right. And you actually take that stuff up to the board. I know in the case of Glide, you got to deliver the message and the board acted, right? The board stepped in with their responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. So we do present that back when there's a case that needs to get back to the board and have those discussions. And the board is very open and ready to have those discussions. So yeah, but it has to start with us watching for these things that are happening, understanding a little bit more about which ones are they're benign. It doesn't matter if this one moves over to this new company, it's still okay.
Right.
So the company didn't have any ties, that would make it bad versus some that you look at and you go, we need to dig a little deeper on this one.
Right.
But you have to start that investigation. You have to be watching for these things. You have to have, all your triggers out there that say, wait, something just happened in this area. We better go dive in.
Got it. And you've, it's part of our strategic plan. When we started talking about, this specific presentation, this specific show, I think you were the ones that said, yes, like shifting sands. And, we went shifting sands. That's fantastic. But then you added, but we as an MLS keep our head sort of above the sand so we can see where it's going rather than our heads buried in the sand, hoping that it doesn't affect us. We're taking a proactive approach, correct?
We are. So we look at our different partnerships we can leverage when we do that. And so one of the examples that I like to use is that scheduling tool. So we said we were about ready to go with this one particular scheduling tool, and we said, that might not be the best approach now given the change. What are the different options? And we went out and we analyzed a bunch, and then we found that we are part of a group of MLSs called MLS Aligned.
Okay.
And for those who may not have heard of MLS Aligned, it's a small group of MLSs that are, all of us have development teams. They're all very similar to MLS Listings. And so it includes the Arizona Regional MLS, includes Utah, it includes Portland, it includes Milwaukee, it includes us. And we are all going through the same process about the same time going, wonder what our other options are on this one.
Right.
And so we came together and we said, you know what? I wonder if we could do something together as MLS Aligned. And what we did was we went out and we acquired some software as MLS Aligned, something none of us could do alone,
Right.
because that's bigger than what an MLS could normally do. But as a group of MLSs, we acquired some software that was out there that does scheduling. It needed some additional things added to it to bring it up to date because it was an older piece of code. And
Okay.
so we're doing that right now. And then we're going to be deploying that as MLS Aligned, and which means that it would be very difficult for that piece of software to get acquired. It would be very difficult for that to be next on the list
Right.
that you had there, because it's owned by a group of MLSs.
Got it. So, that's one solution, but our strategic plan includes multiple solutions, and I definitely want to get a little closer to those as well. But I sort of want to talk about. I want to go back to those companies again, right? We see consumer-centric tech companies involved in this now. We see, NAR they've got a program by which they assist emerging technology companies. We've got a lot of different players coming in now.
We do, yeah. NAR has their REACH program, which is where they are like a venture capitalist, and they go and fund people in the prop tech space, and try to cultivate that whole arena to a certain degree. But the fact that you even have that list, Mark,
right.
The list that you had on the screen before, I bet you there's a lot of MLSs out there that don't even look. They don't compile the list. We didn't just compile that list. We were compiling that list as they happen. That's where I would reach out to you and say, add another one to the list.
Right.
Because we saw these as they're happening, and as they're happening, we're stepping back and we're saying, does this impact our subscribers? Is this something that they have? Is this something we need to worry about? Is there something we need to take any action on? And we were doing that in real time as these things happen throughout the year. And that's why we said in the previous years, it was all pretty slow. It was something we see, we can react to. And then this year, it's just been a frenzy of activity on MLS Listings side to just look at all those as they're happening and analyze them.
Right. And see how it affects not only our organization and our toolkit, but what's that final impact, right, down on the broker and agent subscriber base, because it affects all the way down. We chatted before we did a presentation earlier this week. We piloted this program, and I was kiddingly saying that, at one time the Swanepoel group said, one of the biggest disruptors, I believe they called him, is possibly that kid in his parents' garage. Right now, we in Silicon Valley, we know what that means, because look at all the tools that were invented, right, or brought to the market from the parents' garage now thing. But we're in the middle of a academic core, right? You got Berkeley, you got San Jose State, you've got, and Stanford. We're seeing these technology companies now coming out a little more mature than they used to be when they came out of the garage. They're coming to market with a viable tool, and they're coming to us.
They are. We're actually talking to one right now that's out of Stanford. We can't really get into the details of the company just yet, but that's a great example of here's this company that it's a startup, and they're in the prop tech space because they see that's a up and coming space, and so that's where they wanted to be. And You start a company with graduates from Stanford. Who do you go to first?
Right.
Oh, there's this MLS down the street called MLS Listings. Let's check in with them. So we do get a
Right.
lot of those people reaching out, and we're working with one of those right now.
Got it. Okay. So let's move towards that strategy concept, because you already talked about one of the strategies is let's see what we can get that's already out there. And in the case of MLS Align, I think what really differentiates that purchase of that scheduling software is it's owned by real estate. It's not owned by, Wall Street. It's not owned by, a company in another, literally, maybe in Canada or something like that. No, it's owned by real estate. And that's a huge benefit right now.
It is. It's a different way that you structure it. So if you are one of these other startups, you may be looking to be the best company in this space for a job for life as that CEO. Not many of those, though. Most of them have an exit plan. Most of them had to go to get funding from somewhere, usually a venture capitalist or a group of venture capitalists, and they want to get a return on their dollar. The MLS Align doesn't like that. So MLS Align, is owned by this small group of MLSs, and so we're not looking at selling that scheduling tool, although everybody has a price, right? So if there was a gazillion dollars thrown at us, that might be interesting, and that would actually be something to look at. But that's not right. That's probably not in the cards, and it's certainly not what we're designing it for. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So where we're bumping up against the strategy of build versus buy, right?
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing too, that since we are one of those handful of MLSs in the nation that have a development team, and I think a lot of people heard me say that we have a build and buy methodology. We are not trying to build everything with our software engineers. Right. Well, that would be really cool to do. It could be even fun to do from an engineer's perspective, but it would be costly to do because I'd need a lot more engineers to pull that off. So what we're doing is we're saying, if we're going to build parts and we're going to use vendors to buy some other parts, which parts do we build and which parts do we buy? Right. And so we have this whole methodology around, let's build the things that are at the core of the service that our subscribers use. And that is all around the listing data. So that's all the parts that we've built in our system, all the things that the listing agent uses to enter the listing, all of the data distribution of that listing data. Right. But then when it comes to the search part of it, then we have a lot of different vendors that we use. And so we have this solution. We have this service. If the service was a puzzle, right, we're supplying some of the puzzle pieces, and some vendors are supplying others. Now what we're doing is we're taking a step back and saying, that's worked well for us, but are there other parts that we should be building? I don't know the answer to that. And this whole ever-changing world of vendors being bought makes us go back and take a look at that. And right now we're not saying that we need to build more. We did say it would be interesting if we could build more with the scheduling tool, but then we found a way to do that with partners, so we didn't actually use any of our engineers to do that. And that's sort of it's almost like a hybrid of build, right? It is. It's going to be built. Just build on the inside. Now we're using partnerships to build. Use some partnerships, and so we've got the MLS Aligned partnership. We've got a NorCal Alliance partnership with the 7 of us in Northern California. We can always take a look at that and see what is the right thing to do there. And we're also looking at things like what you have here on the slide, just says, what are all the different tools and things that the agents out there are using today? Some of these come from the MLS. Right. Some of them are things that they go and get directly from vendors. And so we're always looking at these things and getting feedback as to what things that people think we should be focusing on. And then as we do that, we go back through the list of vendors that supply these things. And then that's where that whole conversation starts as to, okay, Mark, you provide the such and such tool. Tell us about it. and tell us about who owns the data. And we have that
Right.
whole conversation that kind of where we started on this.
And so you've really created there is an actual cross-functional team inside of MLS Listings that is keeping an eye on this stuff, and we're meeting and we're talking about things like, what are the gaps in our toolkit. As I get a slide up here, there we go.
There's the toolkit.
We're actively looking for the gaps.
We are. And so, you're on that team as well, Mark. So that you guys meet on a regular basis and look at what's out there in the world and what do we have in our toolkit today. And
right.
Most of our subscribers, they use listing management to create listings. They use Matrix to search listings, and maybe they go into Realist for some of the tax data, but they don't always see all the other aspects here.
Right.
But we do have a lot of things that are part of this, and we're always going off and taking a look at where those gaps are. One of the gaps that we're looking at right now is even a gap that's on this slide. So normally a gap would be something that's missing from this slide.
Right, right.
That would be your typical gap. But right now what we're looking at is Doc Central, and we're saying, that's where you as a listing agent would potentially use that tool to put disclosure documents and things like that, attach them to the listing. Doc Central hasn't really done a whole lot. They have not made any additional features or enhancements to their tool in a while. And so we step back and we notice that. And we say, okay, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe they have all the same features as everybody else.
Right.
Or maybe they've got long in the tooth and others are out there with, new shiny tools that do things that they don't.
Hungrier companies.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I throw to the group that Mark is on and say, hey, team, go analyze that too. Is that something we should be looking at? And so we are doing that, taking a look at different things. And so these gaps that Mark talked about are not just always the missing tools, but also look at the things that we have. And we also look at things and say, well, out of these ones that we have, how are they utilized as well, and making sure that we've got the things on here that people want to use.
Right. It's almost as though there's this ongoing audit that's taking place. That's not going to come to an end, because as we've talked about, this frenzy of purchases and new product coming in, sometimes it literally walks in our front door, like the example of, that group out of Stanford that has come to us.
Yeah.
So, and we're auditing the contracts to make sure.
This is a never-ending thing. It should never end. We should never feel comfortable with where we're at.
Right.
We've always got to be looking at these things and understanding, where we sit, where these vendors are, who's shifted, who just, made a change. And that's why we have that other list with all those changes on it, because we are watching all those things. Even if they're not already on this list, they may have been somebody we were looking at or thinking about or talking to. So we're always looking to see where those acquisitions are taking place. And it's like, I think of it as like a big chessboard, and all of these are different players. These are all pieces on the chessboard. And sometimes, the pawn turns into another queen. It becomes more powerful. And now we'd have to understand what that means. Are they in our list? Should they be in our list? Or maybe the chess piece needs to be taken off the board.
Yeah. Maybe it was a knight at one time, but that knight's gotten a little old. Right. And in some ways, many times we pay for the knight for his services, but not a lot of people are going to that knight. Right. So we're looking at even how things are being used as well as part of this audit.
Yep. Yeah. We definitely are. But the more complex part of all of that is definitely the acquisition that is happening, and whether those are safe, whether they're potentially not safe, in terms of our subscriber needs,
right?
And what we do with those things.
So we've talked, there is build, and yes, we still build. We build the critical core aspects of the MLS that we provide services to for our 5 counties. Now there's build, but we do it with partners. Okay. Then you've got buy, which we do sometimes individually, we buy, but there is a leverage tool that you have put in that we can use now with the Alliance in that buy environment. It's sort of the fourth solution option for us.
Yeah, I mentioned that we try to leverage partners wherever we can, right? And I refer to the MLS Aligned as one partner or one group that we can leverage, and we can leverage them in the way that we described with the scheduling tool. We have another set of partners in Northern California, and we can leverage them differently. They're not a group of people that are creating things, so we can't do the same type of pattern, can't follow the same pattern as what we're doing with MLS Aligned. But what we can do is say, you know what, there are 60,000 real estate agents across Northern California.
Right.
When we get a contract with a company to pay for, say, Realist, just to pick one off this list here, they charge us based on the fact that we have 16,000 agents.
Okay.
And there are volume discounts that all of these people apply to the pricing models. And so if we come together and say, hey, we're going to put together a contract that makes this available to Northern California, the pricing comes down because it's a volume discount based on the number of people that we have that can want to use that tool. So we can get better pricing. So we've started that discussion with our NorCal partners and are looking at doing that.
Okay.
And going back, that's going to take some time to do. It's not something that can happen overnight because all of these contracts are multi-year contracts.
Yeah, different timing and such.
Absolutely different timing. So in any one year, there's, some contracts that are coming to renew and others that are out there on the horizon. So it does take some coordination to do all of that. But that is something that we are looking at working on and have started the discussions on with the NorCal group to see how do we pull together and leverage our strengths together.
Right. And it's definitely, it's in order to stay competitive, try and stay ahead of things. It really does take a multiple pronged strategy. We're not winging it here. We've got a plan to maintain the toolkit for our subscribers.
Yeah, I wish there was one silver bullet we could use.
Right.
It would make all our lives easier, but that's just not the way the world works in this case. And so we do have to watch all those different things, and we have to then leverage the strengths of the different partners we have and try to get the best out of those relationships and drive those relationships to where we need them to be able to really leverage this. And we need to be watching all of these different vendors out there, even if they're not someone that's on my list of people I'm using today. They might be someone that I'm wanting to use down the road. And so I want to know if they were just acquired by somebody. And then even if I'm not using them, I want to dive into it a little bit to understand, is that a future chess piece, or did they just take themselves off the table by whatever that acquisition was that they just did?
And is their tool, their service, an emerging service that could be offered, right? Maybe not in their format, but it may be in the new world, Zoom technology. In 2018, Zoom what? By 2020, we were all Zoomed, right? And so an emerging technology that grabbed the industry and the industry grabbed it back. And right now, I know we're looking at a couple of things, real close on the radar to us right now. Disclosure management.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what we were talking about before in terms of looking at the tools that we already have in place for that and seeing, are they okay? Are they adequate? Did the others in the industry leapfrog them? And maybe maybe it's time for change.
Okay.
Don't know the answer to that. That is something that we are taking a look at.
Got it.
But yeah, that's one of those.
And then actively searching in that offer management, right? I got, 6 deals coming in. How do I stay in touch with
this?
Keep an eye on those.
Yeah. In this last year, the market got crazy. And I mean, who am I to tell our subscribers that the market has gotten crazy? They're living it. And so, but as you know, there's so many, multiple offer scenarios these days that you just didn't have as many of them in the past. But now does it make sense then for us to be looking at offer management tools? And I think it does. And so now we're talking to some of those and seeing what's out there. What are those players looking like?
Okay.
And, and when we have those discussions, it goes all the way back to where we started, Mark, and that was we started with a list of companies that had already been acquired. When we're talking to these companies, they may not have been acquired yet. We ask them about that.
Absolutely.
We ask them, where's your funding from? Are you, getting your funding from friends and family and you're in the garage? Great. Or are you getting your funding through venture capital? And if you are, do they have an exit plan?
Right.
Do they, what is that exit plan? Can you share that with us? And so just understanding all of that helps us put the bigger picture in place to say, there may be this really cool vendor today, but if they have an exit plan that says that they got to do X, Y, or Z, that's something that factors in.
Right. We all know how much realtors don't like change. The last thing we want to do is buy some change for them. It's coming 3 years down the road, but we're going to buy it now. So no, we're really conscious of that. And I think that is to the benefit of our subscribers. As we talked about before, it's you're in contact daily with other colleagues at the president CEO level of other MLSs. Are you hearing those other MLSs address this issue like we are?
Not outside of the MLS aligned group, no.
Okay.
So if you haven't, I think what it boils down to is if you have an MLS that's got a development team like this, it just becomes second nature for you to do the analysis because you've got a team that's already they're thinking that way.
Right.
But most of the other MLSs, they don't have a development team. They're not compiling that list like what you had. They would have maybe something on that list that they already have, and even some of those are they have showing time, but it's okay. And so they're not doing the analysis like we are. They're not looking at it the way we do. They may be looking at it and thinking it's no worries.
Right.
And that may be okay for them, but it's not okay for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we can't use those vendors. I'm saying we have to do the analysis. The equation doesn't always say, oh, you have an exit plan, you're off the list. No, it says, let's have a discussion about it. And what does that mean for us as the MLS? What does that mean for our subscribers? And then factor that all in.
Right. So Dave, I want to remind everybody about the Q&A segment and that, get those questions in down below in the Q&A section. Miranda is already sending them to me. We've got some interesting ones we're going to address here. But, before we move to that section, there are some key takeaways for our for the audience and that's here with us today, those that are going to watch it on video later. And the key messages coming out of this condition of the marketplace. I think the top one is we've got a plan and we're working the plan.
Yes, we've got that. We're working. There's a process in place, and we go into this whole thing eyes wide open, meaning that we've got to look at all of the stuff that's happening around us, and then absorb that and react to it as it's going on, as opposed to ignoring it.
Got it. And it's a multiple dimension audit that's constantly moving.
It is. I like to refer to it as a chess game, but you know what? I think that means it's like one of those multi-level chess games.
Yeah, that Spock thing. He's got this thing going. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Got it. I think, and you were the one that brought it up, and I think you just sort of said it in a glancing way at one moment, but I caught it on paper. An MLS should be the ones that are keeping an eye on this. I'm not sure there's any other entity in the real estate industry that sort of absolutely should have responsibility for keeping an eye on this sort of thing for their subscriber.
If the first time somebody hears about it is when a subscriber calls them and says, hey, is my data safe in this tool? I just saw that such and such bought that vendor. That's a bad thing to have that be discovered through one of those conversations. It should be something that the MLS has already looked at.
Got it. And our toolkit is continually being polished, added to, analyzed, audited. We believe that it's a dynamic environment, not one that just, put it in the kit and leave it there forever kind of thing. We're looking at the possible changes, correct?
We are. And so, I mean, it's like, what's that picture I'm trying to think of in my head? It's like the duck that's moving along and the feet are up below the water moving really fast, right? But the duck's still going kind of slow to the outside world. And that may be what a subscriber sees, is the MLS not moving really fast, but there's a lot of activity that's happening to move at the speed which we're doing. And there's a lot of analysis that we look at and then cross somebody, only to end up by crossing somebody off and not using somebody that we thought we might have used initially and going to the next set of things. And that may not be noticeable from the average subscriber because that didn't result in something, but there was a lot of work that took place to do all the analysis there.
Got it. Hey, Dave, let's jump into the Q&A because we've got some great questions here now. The first one's going to be tough to answer, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Does MLS plan on acquiring any new vendors in the near future? I'm not quite sure you can answer that.
Well, MLS Listings is not planning on acquiring any vendors because we can't. But we're not big enough to do that. Should MLS Aligned? That's a good question. So right now, let me answer that one. So MLS Aligned just acquired the software. They didn't acquire a vendor. We acquired some assets, some software assets from a vendor to do the scheduling part. That's going to go into beta test for in Q4, which is we're practically in Q4. But it's going to go into beta test and it's going to be tested out by Arizona Regional and Utah. So that's almost the entire states of Arizona and Utah. All the realtors there will be using it, their scheduling tool. And then at the beginning of 2022, then we'll be looking at rolling it out here. Got it. My idea, which I need to convince the others in MLS Aligned still, is that this is just the beginning. We need to look at this scheduling tool as a platform and add more functionality to it as we go forward. That may mean doing a little bit of development on it. It may mean acquiring something else which can plug into it. We still have to figure that out, but there could be something on the MLS Aligned front. We just don't have it all figured out yet because we're very focused right now on just the scheduling piece.
Okay. Yeah, the MLS Aligned gives us that flexibility in the build versus buy discussion, right? To use the assets and use the, I like the part that, somebody else is doing the Q&A kind of thing. They're going to test it out, beta test it.
It is. Not only that, but I should point out that it has some missing features that we have to get added into it, but we're not using our developers to add those features into the scheduling tool. So I don't want people to think that we've pulled off people away from the focus from our subscribers. That's the beauty of this partnership. And so we are using some of the others to do that. And so just kind of leveraging the group of MLS Aligned. So
got it.
The best we can.
They're wanting to know who's in the MLS Alliance. Now the MLS Alliance came out at the beginning of this year, right? And it was wrapped around the data share.
Yeah, so we started with a data share it's the NorCal Alliance, and so we've always had a data share. Well, not always. We've had a data share for many years with Bay East, Contra Costa, and Bridge MLS, and then what we did was we brought in San Francisco, Barry's, and MetroList, and changed that whole set of dynamics to be a NorCal Alliance instead of a bunch of individual data shares like what we had before. Now it's a NorCal Alliance. The 7 of us meet, and I just had a meeting this morning with the 7 of the CEOs, and we go through a number of issues and meet on a monthly basis with the CEOs, and then we have a bunch of task groups that meet throughout the month as well. So there's a lot of activity going on between the 7 of us.
Yeah, you've got rules people talking to rules people and customer service people talking to customer service people, data to data, that kind of stuff. It's an active part, or I should say, it's a very dynamic alliance, all working towards getting the right data in the right format, as accurate as possible, to all 60,000 subscribers.
Absolutely. Yep.
Also, folks out there, remember that at the upper right-hand corner of every single page we've got at pro.mlslistings.com is that support center, the Pro Support Center. And actually, there's a big banner at the very top of it. If you scroll through the options there, there's a whole working section on the Alliance. It's got the maps. It's got what's taken place, FAQs on the data. The Pro Support Center is a great place to pick up information on anything going on at the MLS. The audience, Dave, wants to get a copy of the tool of the slide deck we've been using. I think if you want the slide deck, feedback at MLSlistings.com. Hey, I'd like to get the slide deck kind of stuff. Happy to send it to you. And if you got a recommendation for Dave on, we're looking for X, we really need some tool that can do Y. Slide that in that same email. Both Dave and I will get a hold of that and we'll react on it. So, let's see. Does MLS Listings plan on building their own showing tool? No, we're going to go with the Align.
Yeah, I would love to, but you know what? That would have taken our software engineers and diverted them away from some of the things they're working on now for our subscribers. That's why we didn't build it ourselves. That's why we went to Mls Aligned and talked to our partners there.
Okay.
And did it that way.
Yeah, it's a build, but it's a hybrid build environment. The last 3 questions are pretty big ones, so let's just dive in. How does MLS Listings view Zillow? Are they now a competitor or are they a threat?
Zillow is entering the world as a broker. And so they are, last I checked, I'm hoping I'm still correct here, Mark, but last I checked, they were not a broker at MLS Listings, but they are at many of the other MLSs in California. Yep. And when I reached out to Zillow and said, hey, I don't see you on my list of participants, but I do see you at some of the others here. What's up? And they said, oh, it's just taking us time to get through to all the MLSs, but they do plan on being a broker here. So then, that changes all the dynamics. They have certain rights and privileges as any other broker that would participate in an MLS.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure when that happens, maybe we'll do another show on that topic alone. Hey, I love this comment. I didn't know that the MLS Listings toolkit was so extensive. Is there some place I can go to see descriptions of all those different tools?
We have a link somewhere in the Pro Center. I don't know that link off the top of my head, but let's figure that out, how to get that more prominent and make sure that people see that. So yeah, there is something in there that would list out all the different categories of those tools. So I guess they're similar to that slide, but then have links that they do have links that either go to a description or go to the vendor if it's a vendor tool. So we do have something like that. But let's my message is to our internal team. Let's figure out how to make that more prominent so people can find that.
Got it. You heard it, guys. By the time the show's over, need a link. So no pressure. Hey, and there's a great question, Dave, because it really has to do with our next show. This is show number 19, if you can imagine that. We just thought we were doing a little internet show. 19 shows later, we're still going strong. The team loves doing them. But the next one we're doing, number 20, has to do with this question. And the question is, when is the new MLS Listings Pro dashboard? I put the word dashboard in there. When's the new Pro homepage coming out?
So I'm not sure if everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've been trying to talk to people about it. But, you can send an email out and maybe not everybody reads it. And so you put it on social media, but maybe not everybody sees it. You include it in the newsletter, but maybe not everybody sees it. I can mention it here, but maybe not everybody will hear about it. So let me tell you, we are coming up with a redesign of that Pro page, the Pro dashboard. We call it the Pro dashboard. I think people refer to it as Pro. It's going to be mobile, and it's going to take on a whole new philosophy. Right now, what you have is you have a bunch of buttons, and you can click on a button and it takes you to Matrix, and you can click on a button that takes you to listing management and all the different things that you saw on that slide that Mark had. But now what we're looking at doing is changing the concept from pure buttons to what we call cards. And these are kind of like smart cards, if you will, too. If I were to make up a new name here, I don't know if we've used that in our description before, but these smart cards will use the fact that it knows who you are when you log into the system. It says, oh, Mark Messimer is logged in right now. This is Mark's, it's displaying it for Mark, and it can say, oh, well, I know what active listings Mark has.
Yep.
And so it could have one of these smart cards which tell you something about those active listings that you have. And so this new Pro dashboard is not just focused on mobile, but it's focused on new functionality that you can't get with the standard old issue dashboard that we used to have.
Got it.
When is it? Sorry for the long intro there.
No, that's cool.
The question was, when was it? When is it going to be there?
Before you say that, I'm going to add one more thing. Right now, the old, and I'm going to use the word old, Pro homepage, I go there and it's just a bunch of buttons. I got to do some more clicking before I actually get some information that I can now use in my day, my sales day. In the new world, new Pro homepage, first click, boom, my customized information starts coming at me.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about that, so let me just put a quick little plug in for this. That new dashboard has the ability to go off and do things in the background and then present something on a card for you.
Yep.
If there's a subscriber listening to my voice right now who says, every day I always do this. I do step 1, and then I go over here to this other thing, and I do step 2, and I will go to step 3, and I do that every single day. We want to know.
Yeah.
Because that's something that we could automate and put in a card. And imagine if that was just something that you just brought up on your phone or on your desktop, and you just saw it without having to go click, 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 click to see it.
Right.
That's what and so we have been talking to people. We've been talking to people for about a year, and what you see there now is some of the feedback we got on that, and we created that. But that doesn't mean it needs to stop there. We want to continue that feedback. We want people to know that's the philosophy that this new page is going to have. It's going to have the ability to do some automated steps for you and display different things, whatever it is that makes your life easier. Tell us about those things, about what you do every day, and we can look and see, can we put that into a new card? The developers are just, they love coming up with, seeing what these ideas are and say, wow, you mean the first thing they do in the morning is they look at this, and then they look at that, and then yes. So then the developers can go off and create a card that does that automatically.
And that was part of
your question was when, though,
yeah,
right?
When?
That was the original question. So the answer is that it's in test drive mode right now.
Okay.
What does test drive mode mean? Well, that means it's already been tested. It's been hammered on, but it may not have all of the things in it that we need.
Okay.
And so you may need to use both the dashboards right now, depending on what you want to do. And we wanted to get feedback on that, on the new dashboard as it becomes ready bit by bit by bit.
Okay.
Now, in this quarter, so what I've told the team is that I really want us to have this thing go live. And by live, it is live. But what I really want to do is to say it's not in test drive anymore. It's got some critical mass. It will not be at parity yet with the old dashboard. We still have some more work to do there, but it should have enough at some point soon. It will have enough critical mass for me to not call it test drive mode anymore.
Right, right.
And that's where, once it does that, we want to start communicating it even more and tell people even more about it and get more feedback. As more people look at it, more people are going to get up, say, hey, I get up in the morning and I do these 3 things. And then we can say, cool, that could be a card. Let's put that on the roadmap. Let's get that done.
Yeah, that whole smart card format, that smart card design that we build. This is, this was back, build or buy. Oh no, we build, because this is the gateway to our MLS, and we want to make sure our subscribers have the best gateway possible. Absolutely, we're going to build it for them, and they can continue to be involved in that at feedback@MLSlistings.com. Just send us a little note. I want to test drive.
Absolutely, and the other reason too is not just to have that control over that what they use every day there, but also we were not seeing anybody that was putting the intelligence into it. Everybody else was just treating it like what our dashboard is now. It's a set of buttons. It's like a website with buttons that you click on, which has been working fine for people up till now.
Right.
But it could be better. It could be smarter. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. So it's going to be a Q4. They can drive it now, but we're still adding some new things to the car before we go full production. The old car is still there, right? We'll be able to go back and forth sort of stuff. And we'll definitely be coming back with show 20 of MLS Listings Live. We're bringing on Tom DiRezzo. Tom is sort of guiding this project for us with his team. And certainly we'll let you know when the show is. It's September 23rd, but pay attention to the banner on the Pro homepage and we'll get you locked in on there. Hey, Dave, show 21. We've already got 21 planned. Dr. Elliot Eisenberg coming back to see us again.
That should be cool. I always like watching that.
And for those of you that haven't seen him in the past, every time we do a video with the doctor or about what the doctor is saying, it gets tons of hits, it gets tons of views. Going to talk about what's going on in the marketplace. What's nice about Dr. Eisenberg, an acclaimed economist in the United States. He is our partner economist, is he can look forward a little bit. He's allowed to, look farther out, and he's going to bring all the economy data to us and stitch it all together. All of this, folks, is available at our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, type in MLS Listings. You're going to get training videos. You're going to get your AccuList monthly reports. You're going to get your AccuList specials. You'll get the MLS Listings Live. And Dave, they'll get the new, it's sort of timely, the vendor spotlights. We're taking that big, long list of our vendors and we're bringing them right out in front for everyone to see.
Yeah. And that also goes back to the fact of how we're creating this list of vendors, and the ones, it's not just, that's the list that was acquired that you showed before.
Right.
But there's all these other lists that we have, these other processes and things that we're going through. And one of them is that Mark that just alluded to is to go back and say, hey, vendor XYZ, whichever one it might be, how would you like to get in front of 16,000 people on a video? And they love it.
Oh, they love it. That's right.
They love the opportunity to get in front of people. And so we're making that as something that they can do and work with Mark on that and bring videos through those vendors to everybody too. Yeah. So
we've got Home Snap right now is up on the vendor spotlight at the YouTube channel. RPR is coming next. CoreLogic just reached back out to us. They like to bring a couple of their products, Realist as an example, onto the vendor spotlight. Dave Scalora, who you've probably all seen in the classroom out there, is the host for that show. And it's just, once again, it's one of those things that we did a pilot program. It got some legs and now it's taken off. And keep an eye on the Pro homepage for that new stuff. Dave, I got feedback from the staff. They literally are working on getting you that link for the Pro support site. We will include it.
It's going to be done before this video ends.
I know. I think they've already done it. That's the fun part. I got a note from John saying, we'll put it in the YouTube, when we put the description in, they'll find it there. So folks, pay attention. It's coming at you, kind of stuff. Hey, Dave, thank you for spending the hour with us. This has been a fun one to put together. We'd like to, we're going to, Sam Carr, one of our, shareholder associations, we're going to go up there on Tuesday and give him this presentation. If you'd like to bring it to your tour, if you'd like to bring it to, a combined office setting, let us know. Reach out, feedback@MLSlistings.com, and we'll get you on the calendar for this. We've got a lot of interest in this particular topic. And as you said, it's a frenzy. It's still moving. We don't know when it's going to stop, but we're going to stay on top.
It will never stop. Yeah. And this whole topic is just a little bit different than our usual topics, because I usually come out and talk about a very specific product or feature, or and this one is not. There's not a single product that we're talking about. It's more of the process. It's more of showing you what happens behind the curtain when all of these changes happen over time.
Got it. Got it. Dave, thank you very much. This was fun. I appreciate it.
Good. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, folks, for joining us. Catch us on the next MLS Listings Live later next month. Bye now.
Bye.
Make sure to check out our Pro Support page for additional videos on a full range of topics. And don't forget to click that subscribe button on our MLS Listings YouTube page.